Parashat?
Vayera.
Parashat Vayera. I'll tell you the truth, I'll be honest with you. I told Idan beforehand. Thank you, by the way, Idan, for the chulant. As I was going further with this parasha, I was getting more and more upset. Seriously, I was writing and I was getting more and more upset. I really sometimes astonished at the relevance of the parashiyot with what is going on in the world and in our society today. You know, this is not, by the way, a parasha. This is not a talk about, Republicans and Democrats, about this or that. It's about us as a society. So any affiliation is on your responsibility, on your head. Now, when we look at things, one second, can you just, because you're moving the thing. When you shake, you move the camera. When we look at a failure of an individual, when an individual fails, you got to be honest, it's very sad. It's a sad occurrence. Somebody fails, he tries and he fails. But a failure of an individual really dwarfs itself in comparison of a failure of a society. When a whole society fails, it is catastrophic. I mean, on the other hand, the same thing, a success of an individual is very happy, you're very, it's rejoicing, you can, however, the raw, tremendous energy of a whole entire group is much more powerful. And by the way, I just want to make a statement, I'm not a sociologist, so if you're going to something about sociology, you think it's wrong, but whatever, this is all my opinion, that's not the way I saw things, so, and I'm not apologizing. This concept is true also from a materialistic point of view, when you see somebody succeeding, or you see a society that it's failing and it's hunger and so on and so forth, and also from a spiritual point of view, it's all the same thing. The internal energy of a good deed that is done in an organized fashion, in an organized way, is much greater than you can even imagine. And the effect is, it's really extremely powerful and really influences, you should know, first of all, and most of all, the side that gives more than the side that receives. And I'll explain to you why, if I may. That principle, by the way, we could learn from what happened in the kingdom of Sodom, which was an old kingdom, a small kingdom, one of those city-states in the Mediterranean, in what is today called the Jordan Valley or the Dead Sea, which it was, of course, a part of the historical Israel, and it's not Palestine. And that was a very flourishing society. It was nice. There was a lot of business going on there. And if you think that in Sodom there were no laws and there was no order, is absolutely mistaken. Sodom had a very, very well organized and oiled law machine, extremely cruel, that really made the strong stronger and the weak weaker, and really ignored the well-being of the individual inside that society. And that is, of course, very, very cruel and horrible, more than just a regular crime. And even more severe than organized crime. We have organized crime, the Cosa Nostra, the mafia, and so on and so forth, which is really hard and so on and so forth. But the hardest point, or the most difficult crime to deal with, is crime that is done within the boundaries of law and government. That is terrible. That's one of the things that happened in the Arab territories in certain parts of the Middle East, Gaza, the West Bank, and so on and so forth, right? Or sometimes not only through the boundaries, but they're using the law to commit a crime. That's really, really bad. Over there in Sdom, there was absolutely a pure regulation against giving, against kindness. One of the dangers of over-regularization of government over people is that. Yes, I might sound like a libertarian. Again, this is not political. Giving and acts of kindness in Sdom were considered to be a tremendous sin that really affects the overall capitalism of private capitalism. How do we come to a state as a society like Sdom? What in the world went wrong that you create a society like Sdom? And again, that's one of the reasons as I was going through it, I was getting very upset into that, because I actually realized something today that I didn't really realize before. I'm going to ask you questions. How many times have you find yourself not saying anything, keeping quiet in order not to get into a conflict? How many times you're about to say something, but maybe because of the reaction that would be, maybe you don't say what you need to say. Maybe you are too afraid that you're going to be judged one way or labeled one way or another. Maybe you're afraid that, as they say, your wings will be cut off. Somebody will clip your wings. So what happens in cases like this? We always say, because I'm a peace-loving person. Yeah. You're not. You're not. Maybe a chicken. But you're not seeking for peace. I'm going to tell you something. Fear is a natural feeling. It's natural. Bravery is a decision that you make. Being brave is a decision. Being afraid is a natural thing. It's a natural feeling that a person has. I have this in mind. When I was a child, I was always known to the guy who can't keep his mouth shut. I would see something wrong, I would say it. Many times they used to tell me in Ladino, because in my house they spoke Ladino, "Cállate, cállate, be quiet." Ladino means be quiet, right? You might know this, right? Be quiet. Don't say it. Shh. No this. Don't say it. Didn't really help much, at least with me. So what happens in cases like this? So we make a little, we squeeze ourselves a little bit like this. You get your how do I call this? You get your micro expressions, and you kvetching a little bit like this, and you make a small repair here. You make an adjustment to depends who is standing in front of you and who is listening to you. You're adjusting your words. I wouldn't say you're lying. It's not like an out in the open, crazy lie out there. But, a little clipping here, a little changing there, a little addition here. Some editing, of course, is always. And at the end, you sound like a completely different person than really who you are. How many times it happened to all of us? Of course, again, you always say, I don't want to get into conflicts. Slowly, what happens in the cases like this, you're becoming a different person. First of all, you learn how to lie. You learn how to say the truth, and so on and so forth. But you become a different person. I'm not saying go head to head with everything, every time, all the time, be a argument-seeking person that always, no, I'm not talking about this. But if there's something you need to say, you got to say it. Not only you become a different person, even in cases like this, most of the time, you are not being heard. your wishes, your wills, your feelings are not being heard. And you're becoming a very frustrated person and very bitter person. And sometimes it's very scary to say your authentic voice even to yourself. Why? Because through this old ancient thing that we have, all of us, that we all want to be loved by all. And that's not going to happen. You're not going to be loved by all. And whatever somebody thinks about you, should not really be much of your concern. Many times we keep quiet not to ruffle anybody's feathers as well, not to create, and we see many times the aspect of silence almost like a religious practice, a great ethical religious practice, not to say anything. And by the way, that's what happens to Jews all the time throughout the generation. Oh, we just be quiet. Put your head down, you're Jewish. Don't say anything. No! Look what happened to us today. That really, you can use sometimes examples, from the Tanakh, that this is what is correct, but it's not necessarily like this. And I'm going to tell you something. If you're going to look, for example, at Avraham Avinu, the whole entire parasha altogether, maybe the parasha itself wants to tell us a different lesson that we're always looking at. Not necessarily always of emunah, through silence, but rather the damage that comes because you didn't say what should have been said. Maybe. I'm suggesting to you something new. I'm challenging you to actually think differently. Maybe the parasha comes to teach us here and to warn us not to express your own inner voice. It doesn't mean that you have to have an opinion about everything. We're not talking about that. Because what's the greatest danger of knowledge?
Thinking you know everything?
You think you know everything. I'm not talking about that. There's certain things that you don't know, so okay, keep quiet, you don't know. But we're not talking about those things at all, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. When you don't say those things, you really are deleting the truth that exists within inside, or that would arise from yourself, from your actions. It will be very hard for you, and I'm going to tell you this, and I'll say it again. It's very hard for you to become a religious person when you are not truthful to what you know is the truth from inside. And here I said it. There is a certain thread in this parasha that is, again, as I said to you before, is very appropriate for our days, more than ever before, I think, and that is that thread of silence, or the will sometimes to make other people silent, not to say anything, whether it's ourselves, whether it's others. We have to say that this is not the way of the Torah. The Torah told us, "Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa." If you care about your fellow human being, if you don't want to spill his blood, don't stand there and be quiet. Why? Because what it tells us? It tells us over there the mitzvah of tochecha, of rebuking. And the mitzvah is, hocheach tochiach et amitecha. Rebuke him for what you know needs to be rebuked. If you see he's doing something wrong, you gotta spit it out. You gotta say it. If not, you are spilling his blood as well. It's your fault as well. You need to remember, we always blame society for whatever happened to us. We always do that. But I have a question for you. Who is really society? It's us. We use, it's society's fault. Well, we should say it's our fault, because it's our watch. I know this is not what people would teach you from this parasha, but I don't want to teach you something that you already know. I'm going to challenge you to maybe look into something else as well from this parasha. When you know the truth and you keep quiet many times, it brings us to a complete disaster. Like Winston Churchill said on the Munich Accord that they signed in 1938, when Europe stood on one side while Hitler, annexed a certain region. He said something, and I'm not quoting because I don't really the words, but their ability to choose between disgrace and war, they chose disgrace. Because you chose to be disgraced, you're going to get war as well. When you don't stand straight in front of wrongdoing, the wrong becomes greater and greater and greater and greater. The Torah tells us this. Ayesh bachem shoresh porei rosh o la'ana. Is there any bad aspects among you? Uproot it from the root. We have, of course, and I'll give you a few examples for silence from this parasha. We have the silence of Avraham Avinu when he tells in his heart, after the Kadosh Baruch Hu told him that he's going to have a son, right? When he's almost 100 years old, right? Sarah listens from the tent that they're going to have a son in some kind of a miraculous, event. Sarah left, but that, of course, Kadosh Baruch Hu sees. That's not hidden from the eyes of Kadosh Baruch Hu. And it says, Lama ze tzachaka Sarah? Why did Sarah was laughing, right? So he asked Avraham, and Avraham does what? Avraham keeps quiet. Because he himself left at the first time that he was told that he's going to have a son. As much as Sarah. And he says, Vayipol Avraham al panav, Vayitzchak, Vayomer belibo. And he said in what? In his heart. He didn't say it. He said it in his heart. Haleben me'ah shana yivaled? A person who's 100 years old is going to have a son? Ve'im Sarah habat tishim shana teled? What? Sarah is 90 years old. Who in the world heard that a 90-year-old woman gave birth? It's impossible. Right? He could have judged Sarah in favor, but he decides to do what? Keep quiet. He doesn't say a word. And yes, there are many explanations why Abraham did not continue to discuss with HaKadosh Baruch Hu regarding Sodom. Remember, he says if there are 50, if there are 45, if there are 40, 30, 20, 10 left off, right? At 10 he stops. And as a result of that, since he did not continue, there are many explanations, and I'm not saying they're wrong. By all means, absolutely not. But at the end, he said, okay, he stopped at 10, he turned around, God went away, he went away, and what happened in the end? Sodom got destroyed. I don't know. Maybe he could have continued more. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what, Avraham Avinu? Listen, buddy, I'm going to help you. You go down to Sodom, go teach those people. Do something. I don't know. I'm not God. But why did you keep quiet? Why'd you keep quiet? That's something that we need to ask. And it's something for us, all these things, I think, for us to learn as well. That silence continue also in this is let's say a third event where Lot stands in front of the test, a great test, right? It's a big circumstances where the people of the city says, bring us the guest. Take the guests onto us. Come on. Bring them out. We want to violate them. Like Hamas, So two of the three angels, they come, right? Which were there, one stayed, and So of course, what happened? Lot was a new guy in Sodom, a new kid in town, right? And who wants to turn the tables all over when you're just a new kid in town, right? People always talking. There's a new kid in town. I don't want to hear you. There's a new kid in town, right? Who sings that, Edan?
Eagles.
The Eagles, very nice, right? Of course, so he doesn't want to do anything. Inside, maybe he wanted to do to put a limit. And he doesn't want to, but he's afraid that the price is going to be too great for him to pay. So what does he do? he does something else. He takes a substitute, which is a horrible thing that he does. What does Lot do? He takes his 2 daughters and he gives them over, to the people. Of course, did anybody ever wondered what exactly did Lot girls' daughters thought when they were handed over to the mob to violate them? Did you see anybody ever addressing that? Why? How come you never addressed it? What, you just don't care what happened to those girls? You think it any difference today when what happened to those girls in Israel on October 7th? The whole world doesn't care. They know it. They saw it. They don't care. All those feminists, where are they? Back in the closets? Where are they? Back in the woodwork? Where is everybody? Did we ever care about those Lot's girls? Everybody keeps quiet, right? So what do? They keep quiet also. They don't say anything. Hey, Daddy, what are you doing to us? They themselves keep quiet. However, they decided to, I don't know, call it whatever you want, but somehow revenge that for their, because they were so concerned with their own survival, right? And the first time the voice will hear, and of course, you know what happened. Sdom got destroyed, and they get the father drunk, and they use him, right? He bridged the fence. He did what he was not supposed to do. He gave over his daughter. He bridged the fence. And they also bridged the fence. All of a sudden, there's no more morals, no more virtues. It's all free for all. You see where I'm going with this. Take Chulent. It's free.
I don't know. I'm good.
In the next event, HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to Sarah, right? And of course, she's pregnant and so on and so forth. And then there's a great party when Yitzchak becomes finally weaned. And Sarah sees Ishmael metzachek. What does it mean metzachek? He was doing promiscuous acts, if you know what I'm saying. And she demands that he will be kicked out with his mother, Hagar, out. Abraham does not share the difficulty with Sarah. After all, it's his son, right? And he doesn't warn Hagar from what will happen in the future. And even more than that, which is quite painful, if you think about it from a humanistic point of view, not any association to Ishmael, and so from a humanistic point of view, he'd not even say goodbye to his son. It's a tremendous trauma. And sometimes you don't want to overwhelm somebody that it's very difficult for you in your relationship and so on, and but most people choose to yell at each other instead of talking to each other. From my experience when I was in Beijing, seeing really hundreds of divorces, I realized that there are certain patterns that repeat themselves. One of the most common patterns is lack of ability to the people to communicate to each other like two human beings. It's always going into the realm of yelling and screaming and carrying on. And when you yell, one thing for sure, your voice is not being heard. The other person shuts down, and then they have a yelling match. He yells at you, she yells at him, and it's all gone. It's basically over. But when you have real pain or something is really painful to you, where does it really go when you hide it? Won't you say, it's hard for me, I'm suffering, it's difficult for me? Speak about it. When you hide the pain, right? Does it go away? No, not necessarily. If it's accumulated and carries on, eventually that pain or that whatever discomfort becomes a distance between the two parties. It becomes a distance. And when there's no talking and there's a lot of stuff accumulated in the stomach, right? It becomes disastrous. As Carl Jung said, you know what he said? I like him. He was a nice guy. You know what Carl Jung said? You don't know what he said? He said a lot of things. But one of the things he said something, so I don't know, again, I don't give exact quotes. He says that wounds don't really heal, we just choose to move on. And you remember that. And that's why you say, sometimes you wonder, how can a person is still stuck in whatever happened to him? Because he can move on. The wound is still there. We all have wounds. We just choose to move on. It doesn't go away. So you need to make sure it doesn't get bigger. Because there's a big difference between, let's say, having a little scratch or having something that you need tetanus for. You need tetanus for, or you need stitches, and it just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like you have a little fracture, or let's say you have a little, bone fracture or tear in the muscle. If you don't take care of it, it's just going to become to a point that you can immobile, and that's exactly what happened to us spiritually or in interpersonal relationship. Got to talk. And in this parasha, for crying out loud, it doesn't seem like anybody talking. Doesn't seem like anybody talking. And when it seems that we already had like so many events going on, and this parasha is loaded with events, with Abraham going to Gerar, and like one thing after the other. It's like it's an action movie, this parasha. All of a sudden the climax of the parasha comes, and the following comes, after these words. Okay, what words? Nobody actually was talking in this parasha, but you know what I'm talking about. And God test Avraham Avinu. Now we all know what he tested him with, right? What was the test?
The Akedah.
The Akedah. Anybody wants to try anything else? What was the big test of Avraham Avinu?
Sorrow.
No, in this case, the Akedah. Everybody said the Akedah. What was the test of the Akedah? No? Shmaya, anybody?
To go against his teaching.
To go his own teaching, to go
Nefesh.
Mesirut Nefesh. No, anybody
Sacrifice his son.
Sacrifice his son. Beautiful. I see the old guys. Those of you who are not on the phone actually paid a lot of attention to the teachers throughout the schools, right? That's a big thing. That's why everybody teaches you. But I'm here to teach you something else. I'm here not to maybe teach you something else. I'm here to intrigue you with another point that maybe we missed out and maybe can actually help you through your lives. Please give a fry a piece of, fry, you have to. Now, when we read this thing, of course the question is, what is the test? So, walking in, again, silence for 3 days, and, immediately in the morning, right? Everybody's quiet, just like Hagar. Hagar, please, lechi goi, goodbye, right? This kind of is a very difficult walk. He knows he's walking. Yitzchak knows where he's going. They're not saying anything to each other. For 3 days, walking very solemnly, up to the mountain to sacrifice his son, without saying, for crying out loud, without saying a word. Without saying a word. How is this possible? And I'm going to tell you something. Maybe the test is really standing in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu and actually saying, hey, this is not fair. This is cruel. The Rambam says that this is one of the greatest kushiyot, one of the greatest questions that we have. And whoever knows what was the actual test, only God knows. We think that this was the test, but the Rambam says only God knows what was the actual test. And Abraham, as at the time, was demanding from Noach, right? That he should pray for others, right? He doesn't even pray about his son. Which is, he's fighting for Sodom. He's going to war for last week's parasha. He's doing all this thing for your own son. You don't pray. At least pray. At least pray. And there were many cases in history that I thought they were awesome in terms of like walking to be slaughtered like sheep, that I thought it was a great thing. And I'm saying it and I'm saying, I'm not quite sure that it was the right thing to do. I'm not quite sure. At least pray, do something. Abraham does not pray even for that. And the Malbim says, "V'shamru derech Hashem la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat," right? So what is it? Tzedakah u'mishpat goes with the Akedah, with Maaseh Akedah, right? So in a way, the Malbim is, as hard as it sounds, kind of rebuking Avraham Avinu that he has to do tzedakah u'mishpat. Avraham Avinu should have argued and insist that this is not the way of Hashem. Hey, Moshe Rabbeinu did that. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to destroy all of Israel. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Habibi, you do this, take me out of your book. I don't want to be a part of this. Get me out. Do you ever think about it this way? And I have a proof for not for myself, but for this way, what the Rambam says or what the Malbim said as well. Again, Rashi is also has a hard time getting this silence, and he kind of formulates for us a certain negotiation and some kind of a dialogue that goes there. He says, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, Kach na et bincha, Avraham says to him, Shne balim li, I have two sons. Yeshiv lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers him, Et yechidcha, your only son. Amar lo Avraham says, Ze yachid li imo, v'ze yachid li imo. This one is a single child for his mom, and the other one is a single child for his mom. Sarah and Yitzchak, Hagar and Ishmael. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Asher ahavta, the one you love. Avraham says, Et shneim ani ohev, I love both of them. Which I always have a problem, because I say, Ribono shel Olam, Avraham Avinu, Padre querido, right? Luz de Israel. Why did you have to pray for Ishmael, for crying out loud? Lu yichya yeled. And look what we suffer from this dingbat until today. But why did you pray for Yitzchak? What is this? And you tell me you love him? Oh, I just don't understand. For Ishmael, he says, Lu yichya yeled. The guy was a wicked, weirdo. Look what came out of him. And for Ishmael, he prays. For Yitzchak, a tzaddik, he doesn't. Not only that, he's going to kill him. I don't understand that. Say what you want to say. I'm not saying I know it all. Maybe because I'm a very small person, in my capacity to understand. But still, I'm allowed not to understand. It doesn't make sense to me. Whichever way, you feel uncomfortable with it, you're going to try to make it like this, and then you're going to tell me what really bothers me. You're going to tell me it's all about emunah. But as emunah, we believe, and that's what the Malbim says, emunah, we believe in tzedakah u'mishpat. We believe yesh din veyesh dayan, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu emet v'chotamo emet, and right, the whole entire night. Where is the justice in this? What did Ishmael do? Ishmael was promiscuous, if you know what I mean, for a 13-year-old boy. That's pretty bad. Yitzchak was a tatale, was a darling. What did he do wrong? You asked me to kill him. And he keeps quiet. Rav Kook said to us something very, very important in Sefer Orot HaKodesh that we lost. And we are not allowed to use the concept of Yirat Shamayim that would reject what he calls Hamusar HaTivi, the natural virtues of a mercy of a father to his son. You're not allowed to say for the sake of Yirat Shamayim. He says, why? Because after that, there's not going to be Yirat Shamayim. If you don't go after natural virtues of justice, don't tell me you're a God-fearing person. And that, you can look at this. And also the Kalir tells Avraham Avinu the same thing, that he didn't daven for Yitzchak. And he says, because of that, because Avraham Avinu, the Kalir says, because Avraham Avinu did not pray for Yitzchak to live, the Torah was not given to Avraham Avinu, but rather delayed in like 500 years after. Look at what your actions could do. Realize the severity of sometimes not doing something when you need to do. We have a chiyuv. B'makom she'en ish tiyeh ish. Who will pray for Yitzchak? Abraham, you should have done it. Again, why did you pray for Ishmael? Look, what's the haftarah for this week? Open quickly, go. What's the haftarah? Today, maybe?
Malachim Bet.
What's in Malachim Bet? About
Isha.
Isha Shulamit. Right? What happened to the Isha Shulamit? Her son died. She runs to who? Elisha. Come here, my son is dead. Please. She's crying to him. My son is dead. Come revive him. Do something. She realized he died. Right? Avraham Avinu, his son, was still alive. I think that the hint for us what to do comes from this parasha. Whoever arranged the parashiot and the haftarah arranged this as well. Learn. Don't give up hope. Do something. Do something. Avraham Avinu, his son was alive. He chose not to pray. We always said, oh, it's a munah, but that's a problem, as you could see. At least for me, it's like, I don't understand that. And don't tell me because they're greater people than I'll ever be, and all of us, if we'll even stand on each other, also felt these difficulties. Today, we need to understand that we have to speak. We have to speak, and we have to create an open dialogue with everyone, and especially in our society, right? We cannot sweep under the carpet all the things that are inconvenient for us to talk about. We should not prevent ourselves from saying the truth, and we should not wait for somebody to do our job. If you see anti-Semitism, don't wait for this president to get into power, or this president to get out of power, this one to vote it in, or this one to be voted out. Don't wait for somebody else, because you don't say anything, you invite more of this on you. Evil will prevail if you keep quiet. Evil will prevail if you choose to do nothing, and it is your fault. And somebody needs to tell you that. Instead of looking, how somebody peel a sticker on TikTok, go do something. But you're wasting your time like a bunch of idiots on this social media doing absolutely nothing. At least do something useful with it. It's an embarrassment. And it's your fault. Your fault. We need to talk. If we have a problem, we need to talk. In Israel, they have a problem. They need to learn to talk with each other, not to sweep things and to make deals, shady deals behind the scenes, or what they call combinot, combinatia, this and this, manipulations and so on and so forth. That doesn't, and by the way, this whole walk movement concept comes from Sdom. The whole walk movement is like this. Why? You can't say this cannot be said, this one can, only what I want to say could be said. Whatever you want to say could not be said. That's walk. That's what brings Sdom. Our society as a whole became corrupt to the point of Sdom and Amorah, Sodom and Gomorrah, because of the effort of certain lunatics to quiet down the people's needs. What the people really feel. They're going to tell you what to think. They're going to tell you what to say. They're going to tell you who you are. Well, the buck stops here. That's it. We got to put an end to it. And stop being wimps. You have to understand that. So whether it's a walk issue, whether it's a political thing, or you can't say this one because, blah. Well, if I politically associate with this, it's okay. You're going to tell me what to do, what to think, and who I am. Or whether it's even if preventing a yeshiva bachur, that happened recently in Israel. Few yeshiva bachurim wanted to join the IDF. They failed to do it. They kicked them out of yeshiva. Why? We can't allow this to happen. I don't care. This is wrong. This is wrong. You can't quiet things down. You got to deal with it. Stand up and deal with it. If a person wants to go to the IDF, who in the world are you to tell him not to go? But you know more than him what he feels inside? If yes, you're not my leader. You never were. For that, we have to really what we call lakot al chet. Mikulpa. You have to say it like this. Because this kind of a society is a society of destruction. And if we're going to create such a situation of fear or existential fear or intimidation, that's the end of our society. When I cannot say what I want to say, what, I have to agree with everything you want and I'm not allowed to express my feeling? I'm not, trying to hurt you. I'm just expressing the way I feel. Of course, this is all good and dandy until it comes to hatred of Jews. Hatred of Jews, when it comes to hate the Jews, everybody just say whatever the heck you want. No bounds, no boundaries. Just do whatever you want. That's okay, right? That should show you that's an hypocrisy. That's why I told you about the same thing about Lot's daughters and the raping of Jewish women and killing after they were raped Jewish women in Gaza in Israel in October 7th by those lowlifes. The quiet of the nations, the quiet of yourselves. That you haven't done a thing. Not only you haven't done enough, you haven't done a thing. That brings us destruction of society. Guys, this level of intimidation became a very powerful tool, a very powerful weapon. How? Look at China during the Chinese Revolution, the Cultural Revolution. The Chinese government creates such a system that everybody, the same thing that Gestapo did, that Nazis did. You could not trust your own family member, your own son or your own wife or your own husband or your own daughter. You couldn't trust anybody. They would snitch on you and then you would be put down they would fill dams with you. That was a tremendous intimidation tool. Today there's no difference like this. And by the way, there are certain cities, without saying, you became a thing for the city. The encouraging snitching on, whatever it is. What kind of a thing is that? You tell me for the sake of society? No, I'm telling you, you're destroying society. We are obligated to the truth. And if you call yourself a God-fearing person, you have to commit yourself to the truth and you have to speak it up without being apologetic about it. And stop being afraid of conflicts and stop being afraid of saying what needs to be said. If you really care about this society, if you really even care about yourself, we should create a society that encourages dialogue, open dialogue, all the time, from a point of wanting to understand and to actually bridge the gaps so we can all work together for the glory of Hashem, to make this world to what it should have been. And I would really like you to take it into heart and at least think about it for, even 2 seconds. Just think about what I said to you. And if you're going to implement it, one thing I can tell you, what my father always told me, my father, Alav Shalom, said to me like this: always say the truth. Even if most people are not going to appreciate you. You should know you're not going to have a lot of friends if you're always going to say the truth. But one thing for sure, nobody is going to ever blame you for not saying the truth. Shabbat Shalom.